We welcome you to this webinar on innovative science and technology solutions for water security and sanitation in Africa. My name is Barasu Jawara. I'm joining this call from Zimbabwe, where the headquarters of ACBF is. I'm a senior knowledge management expert, and I'm happy to really facilitate today's webinar. So today's conversation could not be more urgent. Through the concept note, you see that nearly 411 million people in Africa lack access to safely managed drinking water. Over 700 million lack safely managed sanitation services. By 2030, water scarcity could replace tens of millions globally, with Africa among the most affected regions. Yet, Africa is also a laboratory for innovation. We have solar-powered borehole in the Sahel and across the continent. We have smart water metering in Africa. We have satellite-based drought monitoring. We have circular sanitation system turning waste into energy and fertilizer. And in different communities, once upon a time, they spend up to 8 hours daily, and I guess there are still some communities facing such a challenge for searching for water, 8 hours or more. Today, we have solar-powered pumps and mobile payment system, which allow families actually to access clean water in few minutes. And that transforms education, livelihood, and health. And this is exactly what science and technology can achieve when it's paired with policy and capacity. So today's theme is very vital and timely because it aligns with the African Union 2026 theme on assuring sustainable water availability and safe sanitation system to achieve the goal of Agenda 2063. It further aligns with the UN 2030 agenda and especially advances SDG number 6, which aims to assure the availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. So ACBF, the African Capacity Building Foundation, is pleased to partner with UN OSAA, the United Nations Office of the Special Advisor on Africa, the African Technology Policy Study Network, ATPS, Advocates Coalition for Development and Environment, Accord, the Cellule d'Analyse de Politique Économique du CIRES, CAPEC, in organizing today's webinar. So today's webinar is particularly meaningful as we celebrate 5 years of UN OSAA, ACBF, and the Think Tank Network Partnership. Over the past 5 years, this network has contributed to strengthen evidence-based policy making across the continent. And more importantly, the network has helped to connect African think tanks to UN decision-making processes. The network has also helped to produce policy briefs, which actually inform the General Assembly discussions. Moreover, we've also helped to amplify the African voices on development priorities. So today's webinar will continue in that same mission, which is turning research into actionable policies. So today's forum is your platform where we really try to garner various perspectives, good practices, experiences, actionable and scalable policy recommendations regarding how innovative science and technology solution could help water security and sanitation in Africa. So we hope through the deliberation and discussion that we'll identify good practices as well as challenges facing our different countries. But before we move into the discussion, I would like to share a couple of housekeeping items. First, this webinar is being conducted with simultaneous interpretation in English, French, Arabic, and Portuguese. So please use the button on the screen to choose the language which you are comfortable with. We also welcome questions and comments from the different participants. Please use the chat box and direct your question or your comment to any speaker you wish to actually ask a question. And then we will address them during the Q&A. Finally, a link was shared, Jainaba, from our colleagues from the UN office, where you could have access to the concept note and the agenda of this webinar. So let me briefly introduce my speakers today, those who will actually help us unpack the issue, but also help us achieve the objective of the webinar. We have Ms. Juliet Waswa Mugambwa, who is a senior program manager at UN OSAA. She'll give the opening remark. We also have my senior senpai, Professor Alban Ahure, who is the executive director of CAPEC, joining the call from Cote d'Ivoire. We'll also give opening remarks. We have Mr. Muyatwa Sitali, who is the CEO of Sanitation and Water for All, which is an initiative hosted by the UNICEF. We have Professor Constantine Corona Mbajorku, who is a professor of applied hydrology, soil and water engineering, University of Nigeria in Nsukka. We have Dr. Adey Feleke, who is the associate professor, water science and technology department at the African Center of Excellence for Water Management, joining us from the capital of Africa, Ethiopia. We have Dr. Ernest Achiampong, who is a senior international development professional at Ansbridge Consult, joining us from Accra in Ghana. We have Mr. Alfred Nyambane, who is the program manager at the ATPS, joining us from Nairobi, Kenya, who will give us the closing remarks. And we have Ms. Jainaba Jabate, who is an economic affairs officer, who is the engineer and the person behind this webinar, who will also give us the way forward. So without further ado, let me welcome Ms. Juliet Waswa Mugambwa to deliver the opening remarks. Juliet, you have the floor.
Yes, thanks very much, dear Barasu. As I mentioned earlier, you belong to us. We've traveled this journey for many years now. Good morning, good afternoon, colleagues. Good evening, depending on where you are connecting from. The Office of the Special Advisor on Africa and its partners, we are really very privileged, and we welcome all of you, the experts as well as those who are attending this webinar. OSAA appreciates the partnership that we've carried all these years with ACBF in particular, HTPS, as well as Accord and CAPEC. You know, the topic today is coming at the best time of the space where we are as a continent. And I think we are privileged that we have panelist speakers from pretty much covering the entire continent. The space where we are with geopolitical winds that are blowing in every direction. For us, this space today gives us the opportunity to really stay the course, no matter what. And the issue on water, starting from the adoption by the member states, the African heads of states, is critical this year. The webinar today is setting that stage for us, which is driving this conversation, the amplification of water and sanitation, the security around it, availability and sustainability. That today the webinar launches that conversation. In March, on the 18th, it's the International Water Day. In April, the Africa Regional Forum on Sustainable Development will be addressing the same issue through the Goal 6, the amplification, and also to measure and identify the challenges that are available towards impeding that the implementation of Goal 6. In May, OSAA as an office, we have the privilege through Africa Dialogue Series to interrogate as well as advocate for the same issue through the Africa Dialogue Series and through the entire month of May. In July, the ECOSOC, through the high-level political forum, will also address this issue on water systematically through the national voluntary reviews and SDG 6. Leading up to that is United Nations Water Conference in Abu Dhabi in December. Thus, we have an opportunity starting today to be part of this conversation to amplify the message, as well as to ensure that water and sanitation for citizens on the continent is no longer on the fringes, but is front and center. Because we are all aware, I think I'll be preaching to the already the converted, that water is not an add-on. It's right front and center. It's the driver for economic, environmental, industrialization on the continent, as well as health. So for us, today we have this privilege to ensure that we have this conversation that leads to one of the key responsibilities for the office is to resonate the voice, African voice, the African challenges, as well as the benefits and also the potentials are amplified at the global level for the Africa we want. Thus, we speak for Africa from Africa, and we give the space to the Africans to articulate what Africa needs and what the potential for Africa is. Before I conclude, I thought perhaps I could highlight a few points to stimulate our discussion. One is on innovation, financing, and human capital. These are interconnected factors that can drive substantial progress in these areas. Investing in human capital and water will encourage the youth who have the innovation energy to really create these hubs we need, innovative hubs that will facilitate the positivity we are all looking for when it comes to water and sanitation on the continent. Number two, we have to prioritize women and youth. You know, we think it's a given, but it isn't. So we have to make sure that we keep these two sectors front and center when we discuss these issues, knowing that empowering these groups is crucial to improving water security climate resilience, and sanitation systems on the continent. Number 3, of course, Barros, you alluded to it already, innovation in artificial intelligence and machine learning can empower water managers to integrate multiple data sources and make decisions that can facilitate water security on the continent. By investing in these areas, policymakers and stakeholders can create the sustainable systems that will benefit all communities. Number 4, and the last point I wanted to make is we must focus on implementing sustainable, localized, and innovative initiatives that are out there. For example, in Kenya, perhaps this is one of those examples that, if not already replicated in other parts of the continent, it should. The initiative, it is called Magic Water Technologies. It was featured at the World Economic Forum as one of those initiatives that will facilitate the changes that we are all looking for. This is an atmospheric water generator system that uses condensation to capture moisture in the air. You see, the answer is already within us, within the continent, but how do we take those good practices and amplify them in other parts of the continent so that at least we build on what already works and be able to address the challenges that we have. In conclusion, I wanted to say that water and sanitation solutions in Africa will rely on prioritizing water as a key driver. The challenge is significant, but so are the opportunities. The opportunities are already there. In our conversation, let's focus on both the challenges, but look forward to the opportunities so that it's possible. Because we know that initiatives are already on the ground. Thanks very much. Thanks for your kind attention.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Juliet. Yeah, thank you very much. I think those are quite inspiring remarks. I think what I like is the implementation is key and the solution is within us. You know, the solution is in Africa, and water is not an add-on, but it's a key driver. Thank you again for those very inspiring remarks. Colleagues, you and OSAA play a very critical role actually in ensuring that Africa's priorities are reflected in the UN system, particularly as we approach the final stretch of Agenda 2030. So, and that is really the exercise the UN also has been doing and trying to bring the different minds of Africa and the agenda to make sure that they're reflected at the UN level. Thank you very much, Juliet. So now I would like to welcome Professor Alban Ahure, who is the executive director of CAPEC, which is a leading think tank based in Côte d'Ivoire and actually covering the whole WAEMU, the West African Economic Monetary Union, and doing a great work. He's my senpai. So I will request him to not to do his speech in Japanese, but in English or French. Prof, you have the floor.
Thank you, Barasu, and good morning or good afternoon to everyone. So it is a good pleasure for me to deliver this speech, this opening remark. So, Excellencies and dear colleagues, distinguished participants of this webinar, actually it is with great honor and genuine pleasure that I take the floor on behalf of the organizing committee composed of UN, OSAA, ACBF, ATPS, Accord, and CAPEC. It has been mentioned, our collaboration over the past 3 or 5 years, and particularly in organizing this webinar reflects actually our shared conviction that science, technology, and innovation must be placed at the heart of Africa's structural transformation. And this is something very, very important. And Barasu gave some statistics to say that actually, when we consider the theme of today's webinar, about 2 billion people worldwide still lack access to safely managed drinking water services, and 4 billion lack safely managed sanitation services. And actually, Africa population is projected to reach 2.5 billion, and the demand of water could exceed the supply. This is one fact, and it has been mentioned in the different documents. Another point that is that there is an inadequate water infrastructure that results in annual loss of approximately 5% of GDP for sub-Saharan African countries. So the fundamental question I want to address during this webinar is how can we guarantee universal access to safe drinking water and sanitation in a context of climatic and demographic pressure? And we can have some related questions like, what are the relationships between access to water services, access to sanitation services, and labor productivity in Africa, in sub-Saharan African countries, in the whole all African countries. So this is one point. Labor productivity is very, very important because we can see that in almost all African countries, labor productivity is low. And we need to increase labor productivity. What kind of relationships we can derive from water supply, access to water and sanitation services with labor productivity? Something we should think about it. Another point is about the climatic issue. So we should try to consider how the pressure on water security, and also the issue of sanitation services can actually affect the trend in geopolitics in the coming 10, 20, or 50 years, because there is a pressure on water, and we need water everywhere in the world. So we should think about the geopolitical environment today. How can it be transformed or affected by the pressure on water in the future? So this is another point. For us, science, technology, and innovation constitute some major levers. But innovation must be accompanied by appropriate policy frameworks, adequate financing, and strong partnership. So SDG 6 is ambitious for sure, but achievable if you combine scientific expertise, political will, and institutional cooperation. And this is something we are trying to do through this webinar. It is actually in this spirit that this webinar is organized, mobilizing high-level expertise. So at this point of my speech, allow me to warmly acknowledge and thank our partners and speakers. First the UN OSAA, but also on behalf of the organizing committee, I thank Mr. Muyatwa Stitali, acting CEO of Sanitation and Water for All, and for his presentation he will do on science, technology, and innovation to support water security and sanitation services delivery in Africa. So I also express my thanks to our distinguished panelists, Professor Constantine Corner Mbajogu from University of Nigeria, Nsukka, Dr. Ade Feliki from the Africa Center of Excellency for Water Management, and Dr. Ernest Achimpong, who is the closest one in Ghana, so Senior International Development Expert based in Accra. Allow me also to express our sincere appreciation to the different participants who have devoted part of a valuable time to register and actively take part in this online platform for dialogue, knowledge production, and dissemination of the strategic challenges of water security and sanitation in Africa. So different distinguished participants, dear colleagues, CAPEC, which have the honor to lead, is proud to contribute alongside its partners to this strategic agenda. I wish to all of us some fruitful discussions so that the relevant and practical solutions may emerge from greater water security and sanitation across Africa. Thank you very much. Thank you, Barasu.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Senpai, for those very inspiring remarks. I'm sure from the participants, some would say that, okay, I think this professor should be also a panelist. You know, given the interaction you've raised around, you know, linking water and sanitation to productivity, to climate issues and all that. So we really thank you for those opening remarks, which actually highlighted the critical policy, economic, and institutional dimension of advancing water security and sanitation across Africa. So now I have the distinguished pleasure to invite Mr. Muyatwa Sitali, with the acting CEO of Sanitation and Water, to present or give us a kind of overview, kick-off presentation about the theme. So, sir, you have the floor. You're most welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Merci beaucoup, Barasu, et bonjour à tous. Je suis très content d'être ici. Je vais parler en anglais. Je viens de la Zambie et je ne peux pas m'expliquer bien en français, même si j'habitais à Dakar c'était à peu près 2 ans. I will be happy to share with you some thoughts, and I was excited with the presentation, with the speech, with the speeches that have gone beforehand, but I got worried as Professor Alban was speaking, because point by point he was going through what I have to say. And so when he stopped, there were still some things that I could say. So I really appreciate that this is building on the conversation that we have here today. And in a way, if we follow what Professor Alban was saying, I think we'll see that part of the big problem that we have is somewhat antithetical to the topic today, in the sense that the solutions in science, technology, and innovation are really important. They're going to help us leapfrog, but those solutions may not reach their full potential if the overarching environment is not enabling for those solutions to, in fact, be effective. So part of what I will speak will be about this overall environment and how it can enable, or in fact, even be a disabling environment. I would like to start also by just thanking the organizers, ACBF, the Office of the Special Advisor on Africa, African Technology Policy Studies, CAPEC, and ACORD, for really organizing this session at such a crucial time. We're just beginning 2026, and it is a year of water in Africa, but it is also a year of water across the world, as has already been indicated, given the UN Water Conference focus on this topic. So truly, we're grateful for to all the conveners for convening this important dialogue on water security and sanitation in Africa. Now, before we turn to science, technology or innovation, it is important to be clear about what we are really discussing. So this conversation is not only about infrastructure or service delivery systems. It is about people. It is about dignity. It is about opportunity. It is about the basic conditions that allow communities and, yes, even economies to thrive. In totality, it is about systems. Access to safe water, sanitation, and hygiene shapes nearly every dimension of human development. It determines whether children grow up healthy, whether girls can attend school consistently, whether women are safe, whether communities are resilient, and whether countries can achieve sustainable development. These services are fundamental human rights, and they form the foundation of prosperity, stability, and well-being. Yet the scale of the challenge, as has already been explained, remains very immense. It remains huge even at this moment. Professor Alban already talked about the numbers, and even before that, previous speakers also mentioned the numbers. I think what's important to realize is that my continent, our continent, contributes the lion's share to some of the burdens that are currently there in terms of lack of the number of people lacking safely managed sanitation. That's over 400 million people in the continent alone, sub-Saharan Africa, and more than 700 million people without safely managed drinking water are also in our continent, in our homes, in our communities. Now, across Africa, water insecurity continues to constrain health outcomes, educational attainment, gender equality, economic transformation, and climate resilience. These are not abstract statistics. There are people behind these numbers. They reflect daily realities that shape the African development experience. I myself grew up having to fetch water quite far from home, having to go and get water from a technology provided by the Japanese, and also now seeing some of these changes happening in some communities, and yet some of the communities still not having those changes. And so water is essential for survival, but it is equally essential for prosperity. At the same time, science, technology, and innovation are opening new pathways to address this challenge. Frontier technologies such as artificial intelligence are transforming how water and sanitation systems are monitored, managed, and delivered, offering powerful tools to accelerate progress towards Sustainable Development Goal number 6, ensuring clean water and sanitation for everyone. None of this, however, as we will see, can be achieved without a key element: strong political leadership. And this is why I say it might be antithetical to the topic, because I'd like to start from this overarching enabling issue, which, if it is in place, it can really enable all these technologies, innovations, and science to really create the leapfrogging that we're looking for. Despite progress, access to safe water and sanitation continues to fall behind population growth and rising demand. Rapid urbanization, aging infrastructure, limited investment, and inefficient systems have created persistent gaps in service delivery. In many places, significant volumes of water are lost before reaching consumers. How many times do we talk of non-revenue water? While millions still lack reliable services. At the same time, the benefits of investing in this sector are undeniable. Evidence shows that every dollar invested in water and sanitation can generate rewards of upwards of $4, in some cases even $7 in social and economic returns, improving health, strengthening education, protecting the environment, and boosting economic productivity. Water and sanitation should therefore not be viewed as social expenditures, but as strategic investments in human capital and national development. Consequently, the investments in science, innovation, and technology should also be viewed as a huge contributor to achieving these political, economic, and social goals. Yet progress remains uneven and insufficient. What has long been a development challenge is now further intensified by a convergence of global pressures. Climate change is disrupting water availability, damaging infrastructure, and increasing vulnerability through droughts, floods, and extreme weather events. Economic instability is shrinking fiscal space, health shocks, and conflict place additional strain on already fragile systems. The changes in the aid environment, which perhaps have been long overdue, also create additional pressures on additional fiscal pressures. These pressures threaten development gains and widen inequalities. They also demonstrate that water security cannot be addressed in isolation, nor can the response only be driven by politics, science, or technology. The response cannot come only from one of those areas. It needs to be a holistic response. It is deeply connected to climate adaptation, disaster risk reduction, public health, food, energy, security, and environmental protection. Therefore, water and sanitation systems must be understood as frontline issues in climate adaptation, in protecting communities from disease outbreaks, in displacement, in economic loss, and environmental degradation. Science and technology are essential to this transformation. Early warning systems using Earth observations and drone technology can improve disaster prediction and mitigation. smart metering, and digital monitoring provide real-time data that improves efficiency and reduces losses. Data-driven management systems allow governments and utilities to make better decisions, strengthening service delivery and building more resilient infrastructure. In this context, fragmented approaches are no longer viable, they're no longer necessary, and they're no longer the types of solutions that are required. The scale and interconnected nature of today's challenges require system-wide responses. I'd like to congratulate the African Union on adopting the Africa Water Vision, which amongst others recognizes the technology factors as driving factors that influence the course of future water developments. If the challenges are clear and the solutions are known, what ultimately determines progress? The decisive factor is political leadership and action to enable most of these approaches to, in fact, come into fruition. High-level political leadership enables system-wide change that no single ministry or agency can achieve alone. The Ministry of Technology is required to be on the table. The Ministry of Water is required to be on the table. The Ministry of Finance is required to be on the table. Alone, individually, they will not deliver the holistic solutions that are required. And alone, they would not be able to be coordinated effectively. And so we think from our side, and looking also at experiences, that working with heads of state and government who have the authority to remove entrenched cross-sector barriers, who have the authority to align institutions and budgets and integrate water supply, is a vital part of the solution. Their leadership, the heads of state, transforms how water and sanitation are understood, shifting them from technical sector issues to central national development and resilience priorities. This shift recognizes their importance for economic growth, public health, gender equality, and several other benefits. Political leadership also mobilizes institutional and financial resources at scale. By setting ambitious national visions, increasing national budgets, strengthening policies and regulations, and directing coherent investment strategies on technology, on science, on innovation, these policies and political leadership can really transform the delivery of services. Importantly, political leadership also plays a decisive role in enabling the adoption of science, technology, and innovation by establishing clear policies, performance standards, and regulatory frameworks for new technologies, and governments can accelerate innovation in water and sanitation through these enabling policies. Now, at Sanitation and Water for All, strengthening political leadership is central to our mission. Through the heads of state and government initiatives launched at the last UN Water Conference in 2023, SWA supports national leaders who choose to elevate water and sanitation and hygiene as priorities of their administrations. These initiatives anchor commitments at the highest political level and help governments to align policies, budgets, and reforms around universal access and climate resilience. The High-Level Leaders Compact, which we launched also last year in Madrid, really places a lot of focus on water security and resilience, creating a room for ministers to work across industries, to work across sectors, including technologies and science. 30 countries have so far signed on to this compact, including the majority of which are also from Africa. So this provides some of that political momentum that can add to the Africa Water Vision on these issues. Accountability is crucial. We think that this cannot be a talk show, and therefore governments and partners working in this area do need to come to the table with clear commitments and smart milestones about what they will do. It is good to know and learn of shiny technologies, shiny ideas that are out there that would be good to create the leapfrogging. But if we are not saying how we're going to contribute to bring them on board so that they could create the leapfrogging, then they remain just as they are, white elephants, shiny ideas. I think we do need to have very clear commitments and smart milestones to achieve them. In SWA, 60 commitments, SWA partners have made over 60 commitments that are directly related to technology, science, innovation, or digital transformation. These commitments demonstrate a strong emphasis on leveraging technology, science, and innovation to advance water and sanitation goals both nationally and globally. And as I have mentioned before, we do need to break the barriers across the different sectors, and we need to break the silos so that we can work together. To do that, we need to work and strengthen systems. Achieving universal access requires stronger systems designed to serve everyone, particularly those vulnerable to water insecurity and climate impacts. And this means we need to work also with civil society and different types of stakeholders, communities, regulators, and service providers, who all play essential roles in strengthening accountability and oversight. An additional component is finance. Money is important, not just in creating service delivery, but also in providing the avenues for new ideas to actually flourish, to test research, to also implement new ideas. The challenge is not simply to close the investment gap, which for Africa lies between 30 to 50 billion annually, $50 billion annually, but the challenge is also to ensure that existing financing supports integrated national priorities and reduces long-term economic and climate risks. This embedding embedding water and sanitation within national development and climate strategies, improving efficiency and transparency in system performance, and adopting strategic financing priorities. Strong public policy and financing discipline remain essential to mobilize the scale of resources required, especially at this time with huge debt problems as well as the diminishing aid environment. Financing the right type of technological solutions is critical. Ministries of finance can also play a role through fiscal policies, including on taxation, tariffs, and subsidy allocation. They can promote the right types of policies for entry of technologies and to nurture innovation. Now, as we close, water security and sanitation are central to Africa's development trajectory and to the realization of the continent's long-term vision for prosperity, resilience, and inclusive growth. The challenges, as we've noted, are significant and in some cases growing. In some cases, the solutions are even opaque, but the path forward is clear. We must elevate water and sanitation to the highest political level. We must break sectoral silos and strengthen systems. We must mobilize sustainable financing. We must strengthen accountability and partnership. And we must ensure that no one is left behind. And in doing so, science, technology, innovation provides critical solutions that can help the leapfrogging from where we are to where we need to be, whether it's in 2030, for the SDGs, or whether it's 2063 for the Africa Water Vision. If we act with urgency and leadership, we can secure a future where safe and sustainable water and sanitation services are available to everyone, all the time, and everywhere. Thank you very much, and looking forward to the conversations.
No, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Sitali. I think, yeah, we'll all wonder, okay, what is left in this topic? Huh? You've covered almost everything, really, starting with the political leadership, the systems, the accountability, financing, multi-stakeholder engagement. Really, this was quite insightful, and very compelling presentation. It again clearly demonstrates that besides science, technology, and innovation, there are many other key impact, many important factors which actually will make access to water, sanitation, and hygiene services across the continent a reality. Thank you again for sharing those thoughts, and please stay with us for the discussion. So now I would like to move into our expert panel interventions. Our three speakers, I think, are lined up, but I would like to start with Professor Constantine Majorgo from Nsukka. Just as an introduction, so that you really kick off the discussion. What are your initial thoughts on this topic, coming from where you are?
Thank you so much, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, and participants. Just by way of introduction, even though I think the last speaker has done a great job in introducing the general subject, and we're just going to be looking into the crossing the T's and dotting the I's. There are many, many innovative science and technology or STI solutions which have been developed, uh, uh, such as digital, nature-based, climate resilient approaches that can be deployed to strengthen water security and sanitation service delivery in support of sustainable development goals in Africa. But as has been outlined, major challenge for African countries is to design and implement enabling policy, regulatory, and institutional frameworks to effectively scale up these solutions, these STI solutions, to regional and national levels of application. And so we are going to be discussing some of these, how to overcome them. They have been outlined in detail by this Chief Executive Officer, the Chief proposals to us just a while ago. The objective is to find enabling frameworks, to support the scaling of these STIs to regional and national levels. Many of them are laboratory or institution-based technologies. They have been applied for research and published in journals, but there is a need to get them off the shelves and put them to practice in such a way that will benefit the larger population that has been in need. So I will stop so far. Since this is just introduction.
Thank you, Prof. No, thank you very much. If I could probably ask maybe a very specific question. You mentioned about specific technologies and those things. I mean, coming from your field of engineering and hydrological area, which specific technology or maybe infrastructure solution have you seen as being really most productive or effective in improving water security in the African context? And is there a way to scale them up, at the national level or at the regional level? Do you have specific example?
Well, one specific example is the use of geospatial tools on platforms such as ACWA and the OSAA. They have been applied in one or two countries in Southern Africa to provide high-resolution data on water access and crop water use to support strategic planning and water resources management. These are platforms that have been tested and they work fairly well, So that's one good. There are others, but this is one good one since you asked for one.
Okay, no, excellent. Thank you for that. So it means that there are really scalable solutions that exist and which are really across the continent. So I would like to move to Dr. Ade. Are you with us?
Yes.
Excellent. I would like also you maybe just for you to share your perspective on the theme as an introduction, but most importantly, I want also to ask you a very specific question. Coming from the Center of Excellence of Water Management. So what innovative water management approaches or digital tools are currently delivering measurable improvement in water service delivery? and how could government actually adopt them very effectively?
Thank you very much. So regarding technologies that can help safeguard water and sanitation, I think it's really important to be inclusive. You know, we have already heard the numbers, billions of people lacking access to water or to sanitation, but we also have to go further from the statistics. We have to, you know, include the stories of those children that are missing school, those women that are walking long distances for fetching, you know, water, which is still unsafe, those hospitals that are struggling to maintain infection control, and farmers that are suffering from high cost of synthetic fertilizers while, you know, other biofertilizers are available in their home state. So the technology and the digital solutions that are available for alleviating these, you know, changing these stories are available, but they have to be inclusive of the communities. We have to listen to the communities. That's what we do. We bring technology, we bring innovations, but we synchronize that technology and innovation with the community knowledge. That will make it a context-driven innovation. So in my center, in my university, as well as in the different sectors that are focusing on water, we usually integrate our researches with the community knowledge. For example, biosand filtration is very useful for cleaning up running waters like rivers that are polluted by different human activities. Then they don't know what is behind, but they know it works. The community knows it works. So as a scientist, as a researcher, what we do is what is behind, what is the black box that works, but we have to be able to understand what works, which, you know, microorganisms that are living in the sand, making, you know, their life consuming those pollutants. So science, you know, tries to explain what has already been known as a black box by the community. So integration of community knowledge and innovation is very important. You know, projects are always isolated and being run by different PIs here and there. We do expensive imports, but adapting is really important. Local adaptation is important. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thank you, Doctor. I think that is very, very critical. Thank you for sharing those perspectives and what you are doing at the center. We are really linking whatever is being done with the community, I think, is really critical, because anyway, they are the one we are serving at the end. So if they have the solution already, I think we should really synchronize, as the word you use. So now I would like to move to Dr. Ernest. Ernest, I think financing as a challenge was mentioned, right? I think from the different speakers, during the opening and during the keynote presentation. And it's seen as the biggest barrier. So do you have, or do you know of any innovative funding model or a public-private partnership approaches that have actually successfully mobilized resources for water and sanitation project in Africa that
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes, well, also indeed, there are quite a lot of models that have been tested and that are successfully run in a lot of African countries. I can't talk about all of them because it's quite a load. If we have to put it in documentation, we can write up to about 5 papers on it. But what I would say is that, yes, indeed, financing is a big issue. Of course, once again, let us address the fact that water has to be addressed holistically. It's an economic issue, environmental issue, it's a security issue, it's also a social issue. And so this is very key. And underlying this issue is the need for financing. And if you look at what is happening currently, over a very long time, financing water has mainly been the burden of governments. And in most cases, it has been to finance mega large-scale projects that will deliver water to the various countries. But this has changed because money has become an issue. Financing these large-scale infrastructure to deliver access to water has been a very big challenge. And so currently, over the past 10 to 15 years, we've seen a lot of practical country-led models that are already demonstrating the need to close these gaps that have been left over due to the challenges with mega projects. Let me try and highlight about 4 of these approaches that countries have adopted. And so the first one has to do with domestic capital market mobilization. What is happening in countries like Kenya, in South Africa. I think Juliet mentioned Kenya. I lived in Kenya for over 9 years, and so I am comfortable talking about what I saw, what I experienced through my work with the African Technology Policy Studies Network. Kenya is setting an example, especially if you look at, for instance, the Nairobi City Water and Sewage Company. And also the Athi Water Works development agencies, they are all accessing credit because there have been structures in place. For instance, if you look at the Water Sector Trust Fund, which is supporting them to ensure that there is always funding that is allowing them to do much more in terms of access. So urban water indeed has improved over the years because funds are being generated internally to deal with these things. Now, once these things happen, countries are able to provide partial guarantee and catalytic grants that enable leverage. And so some of these companies and institutions can mobilize funds through their pension funds, insurance to finance whatever network expansion that is needed. If you go to the municipal level, you will see that there's also this catalytic funding that is happening. So, for instance, South Africa, Cape Town is one of these municipalities, one of these cities that are really doing well when it comes to ensuring that they provide credit worthiness through catalytic instruments. Again, if you look at Rwanda, municipalities and operators are indeed working under the national utility OSAA group to ensure that they use results-based and reimbursable grants to help finance solar-powered kiosks and small pipe schemes. These are very good for communities indeed, if you look at what is happening, especially when large-scale water dams are not able to be constructed. Now, if you do this kind of micro, mini setting up water infrastructure, it helps some of these communities that are not endowed or that are not in a position indeed to access this large-scale infrastructure. So this is something that a lot of our countries, a lot of our municipalities can also adopt. I mean, the third one is also about utility-led financing. This is trying to wean ourselves from external funding. As we all know, over the past 2 years, we've seen what has happened when it comes to aid that is coming to Africa. It's been a challenge, it's been withdrawn. So the question is, how do you internally generate funds that is able to address the needs of our own people in terms of providing access to water? If you go to Senegal, I don't know if we have our Senegal people here, but if you look at the Société Nationale de Senegal, and also some private sector operator, Senegalese Dezo, they are operating a tariff system that cross-subsidize low-income household connections. And so this is something between the partnership, private sector, and a public institution. So the public institution will control the infrastructure, whilst the private sector will ensure that there is funding to ensure access to water. Now, one thing that is also clear for us is how our regional entities are also supporting through making access to funding for the use as far as water security is concerned. So one key example has to do with the West Africa. If you look at West Africa, we have the Banque West Africaine de Développement, which is pooling water funds in line with ECOWAS to ensure that some of these key countries can access these things to these funds to ensure that they're able to deliver transmission plans, networks, mini access to water to ensure that a lot of our countries, a lot of our people are having access to this water. So these are some critical examples that are working now. And if we have to push the agenda forward, we have to look within, as our main speaker spoke. And so this is something we can take forth in the upcoming meetings at the African level, as well as the global level, where we are talking at making sure that internally we generate a lot of resources to deliver access to water for all our citizens, for all our populations. Let me end here and looking forward to other questions. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ernest. I think this is quite convincing. Yeah, there are quite a number of examples. So it means really our countries are doing very well. So there is just need to scale up or to learn from another. Well, if a country A is struggling, with financing or a very innovative public partnership model, probably they could just visit Senegal, right? So solutions are really within the continent, to quote Juliet. So if I can come back to you, Prof. Constantine, about climate, because it was really raised as an issue and affecting really water and sanitation. How can African countries actually better integrate climate risk data, watershed management, land use planning into water infrastructure design so that they reduce vulnerability to drought and flood?
Okay, thank you, moderator. Water infrastructure design will require data, and to integrate climate risk, watershed management, and land use information into such design, we require design information, design data, which reflect both the historical, the past conditions of the climate, the land use, and the watershed management, as well as the expected or anticipated future conditions. Now, for infrastructure that already exists, you cannot incorporate such future conditions. They have already been designed and built. So, improved management and operation, as well as retrofitting, becomes a way to make them cope with climate risks. If you take flooding, for example, urban flooding, the drainage systems need to be cleared in anticipation of the season of rainfall, and such improvements in managing and operating the facilities will help reduce the risks for those that have been designed, that existing. But for those that are being planned, you have to incorporate general circulation model predictions. These are climate predictors, models which predict what will happen in the next 5 years, 10 years, and they are in common use. They have information about what the future climate is going to look like. So if such information is incorporated in the design, and the kind of developments that are anticipated, if you are going to build or expand urban areas, land use, all such information needs to be incorporated. So yes, in order to make them resilient, you have to use data or information that incorporates both historical or past conditions, with the expected or anticipated future conditions. That's a way to make for climate resilience.
Excellent, excellent. No, thank you, Prof. I think you've provided a comprehensive answer for the future infrastructure, but also for the existing one, even how to retrofit, how to make them actually climate resilient. So I think that's very helpful. And the key message is the importance of data, the information, the importance of information. So again, that goes to our decision makers and policy makers that, without data, without information, I think designing a certain number of things is quite risky. So let me move to Dr. Ade. Dr. Ade, I think we mentioned capacity passing, but we all know that it again remained a major constraint, really. So what specific institutional and human capacity investment do you see as needed to ensure that the new technology we've been talking about are not only deployed, but are sustainably operated and maintained? Because I think those are critical. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I think when we talk about institutional level capacity development, the government has to invest in different aspects to make sure that it sustains itself. So perhaps it can be a stronger regulatory and monitoring firms, agencies, or regulatory bodies should be able to be financed by the government so that they enforce the standards and ensure the quality. Usually water quality, when we talk about water quality, the technology is there. We have already adopted water treatment technologies. It is running, but those agencies, those regulatory bodies should be financed enough by the government so that they enforce the law and they enforce the standard. Again, dedicated water and sanitation research units should be well established by the government. Also, in most African, except for South Africa, I think most African countries and perhaps Kenya, most of them, their GDP for research, technology, and innovation is still less than 1%. I know 1% is just a lot, but if we want to advance in sustaining our technologies, then we have to dedicate a dedicated small amount of GDP for research and development. And then, of course, when the government finances such institutions, it has to be it should be planned ahead so that a long-term maintenance is there. So it's not only for installation, it has to run, technologies, water treatment systems, they need running costs. So that has to be included in the plan as well. Well, as human capacity, for example, I think not only the government, but local NGOs and other organizations should invest on training and providing awareness about the simple technologies that everyone can do at home in a low-cost method, for example. So training of the general public, maybe awareness of the general public, and training of those who are professionals. On-job training, continuous training is really important. And then the issue of multidisciplinarity, and if possible, transdisciplinarity should be inculcated into the research firms. I think Mr. Stali was talking about breaking the silos. Yes, we have to break the silos between different disciplines so that, innovative and solution-based research outcome can be emerging. So multidisciplinarity or
Seems we are having a challenge with Dr. Ade. we've lost her. I think while her network get back. So, Dr. Ernest, can I move to you? Okay, excellent. So, yes. Excellent. Yeah, I think in some of the interventions, especially the one of the CEO of sanitation and water for all. I think issues around leadership, governance, accountability were raised. So from a governance perspective, so what policy reform or regulatory framework are most critical to create an enabling environment? Because I think that was raised, that the environment, the enabling environment, conducive environment is quite critical before technology succeeds. So what do you see as the most critical one for scaling science and technology-driven water solutions?
Yes, thank you very much, Barasu. I think, yeah, indeed, technologies already exist and they are working across Africa. Just to reaffirm what my other panel speakers have said, and also what our panel main speaker said. If you look at what is happening around solar-powered water systems, they are really helping in terms of cutting operational costs. We have smart meters that are also being used to reduce non-revenue water, which accounts for up to about 50% of water that is produced in a lot of African countries. We are also seeing data analytics, AI being used to predict pipe failures and all that. But indeed, the constraint is not about innovation or technology. You mentioned it. It is about governance. Governance is very complex. Based on what I have experienced over the past 15 years, as far as my work is concerned, working with various political leaderships, institutions at the national level is very complicated. And so this is where a lot of emphasis should go. Now, let me highlight at least about 5 priority reforms that countries should look at, especially when it comes to water governance. Now, one of them is procurement reforms. In a lot of these countries that we've engaged over the past 10 to 15 years, a lot of them have, in their bid to improve accountability, improve efficiency, have instituted some form of reform as far as procurement is concerned. Some have even set up authorities that are looking at procurement across all government institutions. Now, the question is, what do they look out for? Many of our procurement systems at the various countries within Africa are still prioritizing lowest upfront costs. Everybody is looking at the lowest compared, so you take 3 quotes, then everybody's looking at which one is the least favorable. Even at the UN level, what I've also seen when some of these items are being procured is to look at the lowest. And so that for me is an issue when you're looking at something around efficiency and lifetime savings. So here, if you look at what is happening within the water sector, instead of adopting technologies that are a bit pricey but will give you lifetime savings, we are looking at low costs, and in the end, we end up with higher efficiency cost, and also in terms of the durability or sustainability of our systems. Now, what we have seen is that countries such as Kenya, South Africa, these are countries that are all looking or re-looking at how they procure their systems. They are looking at how they can kind of improve their setup, and so build, operate, transfer system is one of the things, for instance, Kenya is doing. South Africa is also looking at metering as a service model, allowing water utilities to deploy smart meters and digital systems without large upfront capital. And so here, the model is that you are shifting the risk from the utility provider, accelerating deployment, and also improving local technical capacity. And so private sector engagement will be key in this kind of reform that is being implemented. Now, one thing that is clear also is the tariff reform. In fact, if you look at the tariff system that we have in our various countries, it's always been a challenge, because water, as we all know, is a fundamental human right. And so there have been a lot of debate around whether we should underprice water to give access to everybody, or to make sure that people are paying the price they deserve to price in order to sustain our infrastructure. That is a debate that is going on in a lot of countries. Water has been subsidized in a lot of countries for a very long time. At least I know South Africa and Ghana, for a very long time, there were a lot of subsidies around water access to that. And so one thing that is clear is that if you want to undertake any reform, you have to take into account the kind of tariff regime you put in place to make sure that is it fair to people who want to invest in water as an economic instrument, but also ensure that you as a government, as an institution, a public institution, is making sure that you can continuously provide services that allows everybody to have access to water. This is something that a lot of countries should take into account and look at. One example here, again, Senegal is doing something that is very interesting in terms of how they differentiate tariffs and ensure cross subsidies that allows utilities to protect the poor household whilst maintaining the financial viability of the water system. That is key. And so this is something countries can embrace as well. Now, the public-private partnership framework is something that is very, very crucial, allowing our public institutions to control, but making sure that we are enhancing private capability to invest and make sure that these systems are running. A lot of what is happening in our countries are being initiated by private sector. If you look at some of these water kiosks, some of these smart meters that are coming in, a lot of these innovations are in the hands of the private sector. The question is, how do government tap into these opportunities that are being given by the private sector? This is the partnership that is required. And so whilst we are saying water should be managed and controlled by our states, in terms of how it is operationalized to ensure access to all should be taken into account when we are dealing with private sector entities. One thing also that is clear, I think a lot of speakers have talked about, is how we use data to drive what we do when it comes to water management, water security, and all that. Regulators, we know, cannot govern when they cannot access data. This is a fact. And so this is something that we should pay attention to. It requires a lot of investment in making sure that we are putting Earth observation instruments and data and all these things in place. It requires a lot of infrastructure. It requires a lot of spaces where you can capture data that enhances and allow you to monitor the performance of systems that are put in place. So data is very crucial. I think the first speaker talked about Earth observations. I worked with the WMO for some time now, and I understand what it means to have access to data that will enhance monitoring and improve performance when it comes to water management in our various countries. So that is very important. When you want to standardize data, you need investment. You need to make sure that we are ensuring that data is being used in terms of management. And then lastly, one thing I would say is the alignment with the continental framework. As we know, the Africa Water Vision 2063 and plan is already in motion. There's a lot of political backing. There are a lot of engagements around it. I think it's the time for various countries to really tap into this. It shouldn't be that people go to Addis and talk about it, our head of state go to Addis and talk about it, and then just leave it. It's about time countries now look at this vision and reorient their policies, because a lot of countries have water policies right now. The question is it aligned to the current vision of the Agenda 2063? This is a question that a lot of countries should answer. And so if we have a united front in terms of countries aligning their policies and vision to the continental vision, it helps in terms of lobbying for funding from, for instance, the African Development Bank, which I know is funding a lot of water infrastructure projects within our African continent. And that gives us the leverage as a continent to have standards, to have similar protocols that allows us to improve the efficiency of our water systems and to improve access to water for our citizens. So briefly, this is some of the key highlights of how we need to improve our governance system by providing frameworks that allows us to improve water access and water security. Thank you.
Yeah, no, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Ernest. I think that was quite comprehensive. And yeah, I like all the points. I think you've covered, I think, comprehensively, the issues around governance. But critical on your last point, I mean, to ensure that we work as, a continent with one voice, one vision, but also ensuring that the ecosystem is in place. I think there is need to align with the continental vision. Thank you so much. I think we have 40 minutes left for the webinar. So we have questions going on the chat, the Q&A. So I would like to bring probably some of those issues to your attention, dear panelists. And I think the CEO the CEO Salimi, you also can join, Sitali, yeah? You can also join the speakers as you have expertise. If there is any question you feel you could respond, please feel free to come in. So questions are not directed to any particular panelist, but it was just general question asked. So I will read them for you. First, just an announcement. So Jainaba has her email address in the chat. So please feel free to send any contribution, any innovation you have or any initiative that you are doing, you feel could add value to the discussion. And probably you would want to take this to the, to the different initiative that are coming with the UN conference, etc. So please feel free to drop her an email to share what you think, or even if you have questions, I think you still can do that. For the question, so I want just one of you to address the question of Girma on the link between climate and water sanitation and hygiene. So his question is really, how can climate affect water sanitation? I think someone can just quickly address that linkage, but also probably just share on how can we manage that. In different intervention, I think the link with climate came, so probably to him it was not that clear. So if someone can just maybe clarify just quickly, let me open the floor. Yes, Prof. Kosalda, you want to come in?
Yes, I'll like to first of all explain that sanitation is highly facilitated by the availability of water. Many of the systems, the WC and the cleanliness facilities, all have to be, they are water based, and so the availability of water makes sanitation possible. Now, having explained that, let me go to climate. Climate determines that availability. The availability of water is determined by climate. Now, with climate change, the increasing phenomena of variability in extremes, either too much or too little. You have floods in some parts of Africa, and you have droughts in other parts. And sometimes even in the same country, the variability is quite outstanding. Now, if you have water scarcity as a result of climate change, drought conditions as a result of climate change, sanitation is severely impacted. And so technologies that are low flush based, you have low flush technologies that use very little water sometimes waterless technologies, as far as sanitation is concerned, are very suitable for coping with that kind of extreme climate, drought conditions, low water availability. So, simply put, climate determines water availability, and water availability makes sanitation possible. That's my.
All right. No, thank you,
Okay.
Prof. For yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Muela, you want to respond to that question? We have Muela Daka. Okay.
No, no, I'm muted. I had a question of my own. So I could ask it later, but I've also put it on the chat.
Okay, you can come in with your question.
Yes, firstly, just to appreciate this very useful and timely discussion in this year of water, and really how we are showcasing the work that we're doing on the African continent to deal with water and sanitation using science, technology, and innovation. So we have the 11th multi-stakeholder forum on science, technology, and innovation this year, and water will be one of the SDGs that is going to be zeroed into. This is basically in line with the high-level political forum theme for this forum that will be held in July. So the STI forum will be in May, and these conversations that we are having, they fit in seamlessly. My question was, how do we see ourselves participating in the forum and elevating Africa's issues and solutions at this forum that will be held in May? Thank you.
All right, thank you for that question. From which organization are you? Or is it from the UN? Okay.
No, I'm from one of the member states. I'm from Zambia. And we are co-chair of the STI forum. And we really, being a country from the global south and from Africa, would really want to have Africa showcase some of the good things that we are doing, etc., in such fora. So, I mean, I was very interested when I saw this. That's why I registered, and it would be good to have, you know, some of you distinguished people participate in that forum. Hence my question. Thank you so much.
Excellent. No, thank you. I'm sure Mr. Sitali will be there. Yeah, but let me ask Juliet if you have a response or a plan around, you know, these. Sitali, you want to come in?
Well, let's get Juliet first, and then I can come in after her.
Okay. Yes, Juliet.
Yes, what we will do, the response is after this webinar, we will reach out to you and the colleague from the Zambia mission and see how we can really create synergies and based on the best practices that we are distilling from here. If we could have them really collated, that will give us the benefit that can showcase what is potential on the continent. And you know, sometimes, a lot of times, perhaps not to take a lot of time here, but to say that we think that answers are somewhere else, yet they're within. So this is an excellent, thanks very much for this excellent intervention. We will take it on, and then it will also build within the month of May, where the office and the AUC, we will be delivering the Africa Dialogue series. So let's see how we connect these blocks. It will be like chains that can help us to amplify as well as come up with solutions for ourselves moving forward. Thanks, over.
Thank you, Juliet. Yes, Mr. Sitali.
Yes, thank you so much, Barasu. And I wanted to comment on the climate question, just to also offer some of the latest developments from the water side, in particular, with two countries in Africa that have created a national adaptation plan, a NAP, that is specifically including or mainly focused on water and sanitation. So that's Uganda and Zambia. So that's just to talk about what are some of the responses that we're seeing. So we're seeing fewer countries than would be needed to address the problem, but at least we are embarking on that journey with some of these countries creating NAPs that are very specific on water and sanitation. So the one in Uganda is about water, sanitation, and hygiene, and the one in Zambia includes big water. So we're talking water for irrigation, agriculture, etc., etc. But as we were discussing earlier on, these issues are not disjointed. They are, in fact, joined up, and we should respond in that way. I think one of the key issues, as Professor mentioned, it's either too much water or too little water, unpredictability as well, that creates the problem. And if you do not have the right technologies to be able to do weather monitoring to respond, that can affect what you do with agriculture. If your meteorological services are also not up to date. So it's really a connected set of challenges in terms of how climate affects this problem. To respond to my sister's comment, Mwila, for those that do not know, we are both from Zambia, so happy to hear what the Zambian government is doing with others. In May, would be happy to explore how we could work together on that. In the run-up to the UN Water Conference, I think what we've seen in Zambia is also a very strong support of this agenda from the hosting of the Pan-Africa Conference last year in May, which was focused on water. And that was hosted in Lusaka, and then subsequently also that continued support towards the Africa Water Vision. And this type of engagement, and now I'm not saying this just because I'm Zambian, but with those practical examples, I think this type of leadership with the clear responses on the ground, having that national adaptation plan that is specifically including water is really crucial. Can I just say one thing about what Dr. Ernest said, which I really liked, because he did outline a number of challenges and issues that could also be addressed: tariffs, subsidies, how you could also use even value-added tax and others to really promote the right technologies and to have the right responses. And so the response is not just in terms of designing the technologies and the brain to think bright ideas, but it's also in the designing the policies, the financing mechanisms that can create that environment to work. Final challenge that I've seen in a couple of countries that I have worked is really rushing into adopting some technologies without ensuring that there's the necessary capacity, but also the financing to keep those technologies going. There are a number of countries that were very excited to adopt data monitoring systems that were mobile phone based. So you go to a water point, you're able to track the information, and their plans were to do this on an annual basis. But the infrastructure had not been set up in place. The communities didn't have the mobile phones, or for one reason or the other. A very good idea like that could have been made easy, could have made water monitoring, quality monitoring, not a sustainable endeavor because the financing and the infrastructure behind it had not been put in place. So those are some of the pitfalls that I would say are really critical to consider in this conversation. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. No, thank you for those input. I think they are very, very, very useful. So we have quite a number of questions. So let me start with a question on blended finance. Probably, I think Dr. Ernest, you could respond to that. So, what concrete blended finance mechanisms are being developed to provide patient capital to infrastructure developers who are building the physical rail of the water economy rather than just application layer? Mr. Sitali, you also could respond in case you have something around that, around blended finance mechanism for infrastructure developers. I think that's the question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me attempt to respond to the question. I believe it's coming from Nigeria. Yeah, so basically, as you said, that we need to look within, and we need to look at how we harness our strengths as a region, as countries, and as united Africa, in terms of how we negotiate if we have to work with people from outside the continent. But well, you've identified a critical structural challenge, financing for software and application flow readily available, because returns are faster, risk shorter duration. But well, first, what I can say is that we need, as countries within Africa, to look at our domestic credit enhancement facilities within. How do we put our institutions in positions where they are credit worthy, that companies, private sector entities, external agencies will want to invest in that? I think we have not done well looking at our state enterprises and the situation they are in. A lot of them will always have to rely on government consolidated funds to operate. But the question is that, could they be in a position where they are so reliable and financially sustainable in a way that will attract people to invest in? I think one of the key examples here will be the private infrastructure development group, which has established a kind of a credit enhancement facilities in Nigeria, Kenya, Pakistan, and also Cambodia. These are some of the countries where there are enhancement facilities, and this is being done by a private entity. And so here, the idea is that you get these facilities to provide partial guarantee that improves credit quality of infrastructure debt, and also enable domestic investors, like I said, to invest. A lot of our pension funds are stuck somewhere, or they are being invested in certain things that are not yielding profit. Our insurance companies want to invest their funds. Asset managers are looking for long-term investments. And so if you build institutions, companies within government that are creditworthy, that are in the long term, could provide financial guarantee for these agencies, it makes it easy for them to invest. I think in Nigeria, there is a mechanism that is being operated through what they call the infra credit. So perhaps you could check it out. They provide local currency guarantees that enable pension funds and insurance companies to invest in long-term Naira-dominated infrastructure projects. And so here, the idea is that you are able to mitigate political and construction risk. And so such a credit facility will be able to transform something that otherwise were not investable hardware into something that is bankable. And that matches with the long-term reliability of these institutional investors. So let me just pause here, but to say that even with the bank, the African Development Bank, they are always looking at bankable projects. And so at the national level, what do you do as public institutions working with the private sector to guarantee something that various banks, various financial institutions are willing to invest in? That is something that I'll pause here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that response. I think those are very practical and something that we can verify that exists really actually across the continent. So we have another question from Lovis Afenombi. We thank all those who are sending their questions. So here the question is on water management. Here it says, the water crisis is not scarcity, but about quality of water. Water everywhere, not even a single drop to drink. Given the weak and fragmented grassroots delivery system, the slow and inactive government responses, and the cross-sector spillover of climate-related governance failures, how can policymakers prioritize locally owned community water management system, which have often proven more responsive and effective than centralized model, while reforming institutional and regulatory framework to ensure coherent, climate resilient water security across sectors. So it's quite a loaded question. As we say in Nigeria, it's a pregnant question. But I think here the key is really about having to actually prioritize localized solution, right? Which actually are proven to be successful. So the question is really, how can policymakers do that? Mr. Sital, you can come in, or maybe Dr. Ade, around water management. If you have a response or a tentative response on how the government could really adopt those local solutions.
Perhaps if I may, Mr. Sitali, before he talks about the policy and the implementation, I just want to focus on like the communities, they do have their own way of getting somehow clean water. They may not be provided with by the utilities, but they still are surviving. So we, as the science community, has responsibility. So the scientific community has the responsibility to implement, to make sure that the policymakers have access to this knowledge. Then the policymakers will do their best. Maybe over to you, Sitali.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ade.
Yes. Thank you so much. Really good questions. And it's one place that I would like to encourage us to look into is Latin America, because they have a lot of these community managed systems. And they seem to be doing fairly well. In some cases, outperforming centralized models. But I think what's critical here in terms of advantages, the decision cycles are short, because sort of people are in the community, they're able to engage with each other, they understand the issues, they would be able to take the decisions quickly. They also can have rules that are more legitimate and understandable to themselves, and therefore also help to maintain the services, because that is also a crucial part of this process. How do they access the spare parts? Is there a spare part network that they could tap into? And do they have a network where they would be able to deal with any challenges that arise? Because CapEx is one thing, and able to have some skills in terms of managing those services. The challenge, though, is when the enabling environment is absent, or the enabling state is absent, in the sense of legal authority for those community systems to flourish. And in some cases, if these happen to find themselves in an environment where the entire community is seen as an illegal settlement, for example, peri-urban or slums. And so that becomes a big challenge. How do you manage these services with a system that could be helpful, but the overall legal framework may not recognize the entire framework in which they are operating? And if there's no predictable financing, no technical backstopping in terms of tapping into technical skills that the government and other skilled people may have, and then also issues of rights or dispute resolution can become a problem. So reframing governance so that it's able to provide the acknowledgement, it's able to provide the rules, and maybe even go as far as regulation, able to provide some of the standards that are anticipated. These can provide the guardrails that are needed to have effective community services that are managed that way. But once again, just pointing us to Latin America, where there are quite some interesting case studies in a number of countries, Costa Rica and several others, that could be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sitali, and thank you, Dr. Ade, for giving those information, but also the case studies. So I'll move to another question about innovation. I think here maybe I'll ask just two of the panelists, probably maybe Prof could come in here on in terms of innovation. If you were to cite maybe one or two innovation, which one do you feel are the most exciting for you at the moment when it comes to sanitation, especially? But you could mention anything on water. So that's the question asked by one of the participants. What innovation gets you most excited at the moment? Well, okay. Dr. Ade or maybe Sitali, Ernest, you also can come in. Yes, Prof.
Yes, I would like to mention technologies that use nanomaterials for filtration and microbial fuel cell to generate energy from treating waste. Wastewater can be treated not just for irrigation, but to generate energy. And there are some technologies that do that, and also that convert fecal sludge to energy. So these are some of the innovations that are very useful. Membrane bioreactor technology can be used to recycle municipal wastewater to a quality that is good enough to be applied for irrigation purposes. You know, membrane bioreactor technology. So these are some fascinating new techniques with respect to sanitation. That's wastewater management and treatment. Thank you.
Perhaps should I go next?
Yes, come in, Mr. Sitali, yes.
Happy to go next. I was very scared of this question and I was thinking you were not going to see it. But I think it's a really good question. And there are technologies that excite me. And now looking at what are some of the biggest challenges on the continent, a huge cost in terms of water systems delivery is energy. Energy comprises quite a significant cost in just making sure that production is done, distribution also happens. So a technology that can deal with that energy cost would be quite actually revolutionary, because it could bring down the costs down. It could bring the costs down of capex, even operational costs. And so in that direction, given also that on the continent, the problem of energy is not an isolated one. It's not faced only by a few countries. It's faced by a lot of countries. This could be of a benefit to other things. And so I'm thinking technologies that also combine solar or other types of energy that might be readily available, could be cheaper to in the long run, maybe even in the medium term. It doesn't have to get into the long term. Maybe even in the medium term, might have huge setup costs, but could be cheaper in the medium to long term. Those types of technologies, I think, would create quite a dent. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. Jenaba, we can give the floor to Wendia, who has raised her hand.
Thank you, Barasu. Yes, indeed.
Yes, you have the floor. Wendia.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so my question is about the antibiotic resistance genes. That is a new global threat for all the water treatment plant and for the population, because the microorganisms are exposed to chemicals. They become more resistant. So even with the conventional treatment, they can survive and cause a lot of damage to the population. So my question is how to incorporate a fight against these RGs in the policies, because they will bring more expenses to the government.
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. Any of the speakers want to take it? How to include the antibiotic resistant gene into policies or policy making, if I understand the question right.
Yes, let me address the angle of colleagues, perhaps. Ade will continue with that. I think what is key here is to look at what the Africa CDC is doing. I mean, if you look at what COVID did to the entire world and the rise of the need for us to be prepared for any breakouts when it comes to whether it's a virus or a bacteria that is related to water, environment and all that, it's crucial that for the Africa CDC, which has been fully set up and operational and instrumental, and there will be that need for them to take it at a continental level with our various countries in support of what will come out. Because if you look at what happened during the COVID, the CDCs were very instrumental when it comes to the development of vaccines for COVID-19. So the CDC will play a key role in terms of influencing decision-making when it comes to any threat that will affect or increase resistance of antibacterials and bacterials in our water. So I will take it from that angle. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ernest. So I will continue with what you have already established. So the African CDC is there, and also this is when the multi-sectoral initiatives come to the picture, because like antibiotic resistance problem is not a problem of human health only. It's a problem of animals, humans, and the environment. So for example, in Ethiopia, we have this One Health initiative, which is jointly organized or established by the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Health, and Ministry of the Environment. So these three sectors work together to build a policy, to formulate, different solutions for the upcoming resistance of antibiotics. So like the fascinating, for example, innovation is for me, is like when the wastewater treatment, like the treated water goes to irrigation, the sludge goes to the fertilizers, everything goes in a circular manner. But then the problem of antibiotic resistance comes to the picture. This is when multi-sectoral collaborative initiatives maintain and try to alleviate such emerging problems. Thank you.
All right. No, thank you. Thank you very much. I think for those responses, I think we are running out of time. We have 7 minutes. I will take one more question from Adedokun Richard Olubumi, who is the CEO of Smart Law Africa Limited. So thank you, sir, for those questions. I'll pick one of your questions, which is related to the AFCFTA, actually. The question is, what institutional framework are being developed to harmonize water quality and sanitation standard across borders, allowing for modular solution like ours to scale from Nigeria to the rest of the continent without recertification in every country? Is there any panelists willing to take that question? Because to me, to my understanding, well, I did not see any specific agreement or protocol around water and sanitation on the AFCFTA, which focus on trade. But yeah, so colleagues who maybe are in the area could share more if they have, or if they know, or if they are aware of the ongoing discussions. Yes, Dr. Ernest?
Yeah, not quite in terms of an institutional framework, but also looking at what the African Standards Organization is doing in terms of setting standards for water quality for the entire continent. That is something that is very crucial, and also is working with the African Union at the continental level, and they have member states, and so all of our African countries are part of a standard organization. And so this is where decision making when it comes to water quality standards, there's a task force on that, and there's a task force for different sectors of our various economy. And so this is where issues related to water quality and sanitation standards can be addressed. Of course, AFTA is a trade entity, but one thing that is also critical is that they are not working in isolation. They are working with the various continental bodies that are ensuring that if there is something that is worth scaling up at the continental level for the benefit of the entire continent, they look at. So let me just pause here and to say that ASO is a place that we have to look at when we're talking about standards. They are based in Nairobi, though.
Yeah. Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, I think also, Julia, you wanted to come in or what?
For me, I wanted to point out that specifically, you know, the Africa Water Vision is that Africa Common Position, which is going to drive all these elements because it's front and center towards the implementation of Agenda 2063. That's looking at all how to empower the citizens on the continent. For the first time in a year that we have a vision for the whole entire continent, it's important that we have this conversation and the questions that are being raised here, in particular when it comes to the cross-border standards, because that's quite critical. And we will have to make sure that we take these kind of questions forward in a way that, you know, if it was not really articulated in the vision, it must be, because we need to facilitate FCFTA to be able to benefit the citizens across the continent. Thanks, over.
Yeah. No, thank you, Juliet. I think for that highlight, I think it's really clear and it makes a lot of sense, because that is really the guiding, or if I call it the Bible when it comes to water and sanitation. So let me end the question and answer here. I think I really wanted to continue because I enjoy the discussions. I think these are really the best panelists we could have, really. I'm sure all the participants still want to continue, but yeah, we are aware of the time. And now for our closing remarks, Alfred, we've only given you 2 minutes. Sorry, I chopped on your time. So let me welcome Mr. Alfred Nyambane, who is the program manager at the ATPS. So I would like to thank all our panelists really for their insightful, you know, and their contribution, really the wisdom they have, you know, and sharing with us. So Alfred, you have the floor for the closing and the next step.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Barasu. I just want to combine this with what is coming after, I mean, in terms of the way forward. So allow me to begin by sincerely thanking the conveners of this important webinar, the United Nations Office of the Special Advisor on Africa, the ACBF, and of course, under the think tank network. We deeply appreciate your leadership and in advancing evidence-based dialogue on Africa's development priorities. My gratitude also goes to Ms. Juliet with the very encouraging opening remarks and setting the pace for the discussions. I would also like to thank Professor Alba and Mr. Muyatwa also for the wonderful presentations as well. Of course, you've heard the panelists, quality panelists. Professor Constantine, thank you very much. Dr. Ade and Dr. Ernest, wonderful work. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Barasu, also for this wonderful expertly guided discussion, and the participants for your active engagement. Today's discussion has effectively kickstarted the year with critical focus on the SDG 6, that is water and sanitation, which is also the African Union's theme for 2026. Our deliberations